Masters of the Universe is out, and you may have heard mixed things. People have probably told you that it's a pretty good to good movie, which I think is accurate. And you also probably heard that it is well under its revenue targets and that it is likely to lose a bunch of money. Now, we'll get into whether Amazon cares about this, but for you, the viewer, you may be wondering who this is for. And what's interesting is that DoA and I only have a few years difference between us, but I have zero nostalgia for He-Man because I was just too young to really watch it or play with the toys.
Well, what year were you born? Let's go with that.
1986.
Okay.
So I think, but DoA's, if you're Gen X or you're an older millennial, then you would have been exposed to He-Man. And I know DoA has a lot more nostalgia for it. So he'll be coming at it from that angle.
Sure.
And I'll be coming at it from the angle of somebody who really remembers very little about He-Man. But still, I kind of enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you were born in 86 after I asked you, but and I'm only 3 years older. I was born in 1983. So there isn't really a big age gap between the two of us. But it was enough of one that, He-Man would have kind of been before your time. And it was even like, it was even a little bit before my time in that He-Man came out in 1983, I think. But I distinctly remember in like maybe being around 3 years old, so around 1986 probably, because I must have been like late 2 to 3 years old, because I remember distinctly, this is one of my very first like distinct early memories in my life, was waking up with my little brother who was 15 months younger than me, from my nap. We wake up from our naps and then we would go downstairs and we would watch, starting at 3 p.m. He-Man, and then right after that Thundercats. And every afternoon we'd finish our nap around 3 p.m., go down and watch He-Man and Thundercats with my dad. And I remember, that went on for a long time, at least a year or so or something, right? And so watching He-Man, and then Thundercats is also closely tied to that for me, is one of my earliest like memories, crazy enough. And I'm not like a giant He-Man fan. I think even back then, or at least even when I got a little bit older, I recognized how like goofy it was. I was like, these guys are all like, the toys are all like giant, tiny waist, giant V-chested, muscle things. They clearly use the same sculpt for every single one. Like I remember even as a kid being like, hey, these are all the same. It's just like their heads are different and they have different little plastic weapons. But I was a kid. It was preschool and grade school age, and we had a ton of fun with these toys. So even though I would say I never watched any of the remakes, I never even watched the 1987 movie. I never even watched that. So I'm definitely not like a He-Man fan. But watching the original cartoon is one of my fondest, earliest memories in my life. So for that reason, I was like, all right, we got to watch this. We got to do that. But I don't want to go on too long here. But you asked like, who is this movie for? And that is an excellent question. And I think the main question that we have to tackle with this, because my theater...
why? Why in 2026 are they rebooting He-Man, which, again, I think had a very narrow timeline of people, has been kind of a dead franchise for many, many, many years.
And they've tried to reboot it multiple times before, and it never has really worked. Like Kevin Smith did an animated one. There was obviously the late 80s movie. There was
that also
comic
flopped,
books.
By the way.
Yeah, I mean, so He-Man was a great toy line, and a lot of kids loved it back then at the time, but it's not like it had a sort of enduring inspirational storyline or anything like that. It was, and I apologize, I'm offending the He-Man superfans out there, but it's just a guy saying, I have the power, and he turns into He-Man and beats up the bad guys, which is, again, tons of fun when you're a little kid. But as you get even a little bit older, you're like, there isn't a lot of substance here, So I do wonder. That said, I had a ton of fun at this movie. I think, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's because of the nostalgia or if it's because I actually enjoyed it for what it was now. And I think we're going to dive into all that as we talk about it over the next hour or so.
The reason we're talking about who this is actually for is because there's really just a very narrow slice of population, I would say, who has a fondness for this particular media. So I was digging and I found that this is actually a result of Mattel's success with the Barbie movie.
I
DoA.
thought it was that, actually.
So
I had my suspicions. Yeah.
This may surprise you, but because the Barbie movie made $1 billion, they then immediately, Mattel, greenlit a bunch of their other franchises, including He-Man / Masters of the Universe, and, I shit you not, DoA, Uno will be getting a movie.
I have heard that. Yeah, but I want to see the reverse done and have them cancel it.
I do think it's hilarious they're going to make it into a movie. But they spent $200 million on this version of Masters of the Universe. And I think, honestly, it's probably the best you can do with this IP, which is, I think, a compliment to the writers and directors of this. However, the ceiling of He-Man / Masters of the Universe is not terribly high.
Yeah.
So it was never going to be a very good movie, but it is an okay movie. It is a very mediocre movie.
It is fine at doing what it intends to do, which is to be goofy and self-referential and action-packed. And I think they did a very good job of having enough entertainment in it that if you were dragged along to this by one of your parents, you would still have a good time. Or if, like, the group of look like college age kids sitting next to me who just, I don't know how they ended up there. They're like, I don't know why you would go to the He-Man movie, but they just thought it looked cool maybe. And I think they had a good time too. They seemed to be, but I noticed that, like, they were laughing at all the normal movie humor moments. And then I was laughing at a bunch of times at, like, just some of the references and things like that.
Yes.
Or like when, okay, there's going to be tons of spoilers in this. So if you don't want that, turn off now. But I'm going to start talking spoilers. But when Dolph Lundgren showed up, I laughed pretty hard because, like, he was in there and I thought his cameo was great, where the first thing he says is like, hey, you're in my spot, which I thought, they're in a gym, which makes perfect sense. But it's like, he says something like, hey, you took my place, you're in my spot, which is really funny that they would just be like so obvious about, like, yes, we know this is the cameo,
Right.
and that's what I love about this movie, is that it's so self-referential even within the movie. But the people next to me had no idea what was going on.
Well,
they had
yeah,
no
why would
idea
they
why I
know
was
that?
laughing. They were just like, why are you laughing? He's just like some old guy in a gym. And yeah. But so,
well,
that
it's
was
also, I mean,
interesting.
they did a really good job of weaving references in like that.
Yeah.
I started laughing a bunch when What's Going On by Four Non-Blondes started playing.
I was wondering where they were going to do that. I felt like they could have done that.
It was
better,
obvious they were going to do it at some point, which you guys know the He-Man cartoon memes that are very old memes. They're like OG internet
Another
memes
thing
now.
No Gen Zers would know about. This was like the dawn of internet meme time, basically.
Yes. And so if you guys don't know this, the one-hit wonder What's Going On by the band Four Non-Blondes, which you've never heard of.
My wife's favorite song, by the way. I kid you not.
That's very strange, DoA.
No comment there besides that. Fun karaoke moments. But go ahead.
But anyway, the He-Man, somebody in the very early days of the internet took a bunch of He-Man clips that are hilarious with his horrible bang, haircut and the rainbow sparkles behind him. And if you've seen all of the He-Man gifs of him going, it's from that. And so it became very famous. So it is, obviously they were going to use that meme at some point in time. But
of course,
the point is a lot of this humor is very well applied in this movie. And this movie, I'm not going to say the humor always lands, because at times it's a bit too millennial quirk for me.
Yeah, there's a bit of that MCU kind of, pollution.
It's too Guardians of the Galaxy.
There's a little bit like, of that, yeah.
The problem, though, is when people I like Guardians of the Galaxy, but when other people try to imitate it, they just do it wrong. And this is kind of doing it wrong at times.
I mean, even the MCU and later Guardians of the Galaxy movies did it wrong, but and you could argue it was never very good to begin with. But yeah, there's a little bit of that in here where it's like, okay, I see where you're trying to kind of be the Marvel movie, but like, there wasn't enough of that to really bother me. I did notice a little bit. It
doesn't
of that,
ruin it.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't ruin it.
I just think that it takes away from a lot of this film's strengths, which is that it is campy and like satirical in its own right.
Yeah.
And I think it's at its best when it is just embracing its own goofiness rather than trying to be ironic about it, if that makes sense.
Well, and what
Like-
we're talking about too is the thing where it's like you could have a semi-serious scene where this happens in like all the Captain America movies after the first one. The first one was a good movie. The rest of them had like these scenes. I guess Winter Soldier didn't have as much. of
Winter
this, but,
Soldier
like,
is good.
Yeah, sure. But like like Brave New World had one of these scenes, and I think pretty much every Marvel movie does, where there's like some sort of serious heartfelt moment, and then just like out of nowhere one of the characters is like, yeah, but they really can't handle their pepperoni pizza, huh? And everyone's like,
Or they go like,
you. And
awkward.
it ruins it, right? It's something like that, where it's just this non sequitur.
It is this like millennial throwaway irony that I really dislike. And there are instances of it in this, and it is not the funny. It doesn't make up the funny parts of the movie. The funny parts of the movie are when it wears its ridiculousness on its sleeve, and then it embraces it, and it doesn't try and take fourth wall breaking cracks at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me,
this movie was very clever too, I think, for a lot of it with how they did it. Like, one of the things I really loved is that, you know, those of us who played with those toys when we were kids or familiar with it know how like dumb the names of these toys are, where it's, you know, it's like Moss Man and Fisto,
Ram-Man is a real name.
All that. They're very basic names that like a preschooler or an elementary schooler can latch onto and be like, yeah, he's Ram-Man because he rams things, you know? But the thing is, I love that in that movie, that those names weren't the actual names of any of those characters in the movies, but they were the names that young Prince Adam assigned to them after he was sent to Earth, is how he remembered them, which made so much sense. And it was so clever to be like, yeah, of course they've got these dumb names because those were the names that were thought up by this little kid who was just remembering them for their most basic, you know, traits. So I love that they worked in the silly names for the action figures in that way. I thought that was very clever.
And this is where it really operates at its best, DoA, because it is a property for, 8 to 10-year-old boys. And, the even literalness younger, or even younger, really. And the literalness of it makes sense. And the characters also just had those names as action figures and characters in the show. And so what's so funny about this film is that they use that excuse of, Adam being 10 years old and being taken away from his home planet, assigning these names to them. And then when he goes back, he refers to them as his made up names because he doesn't remember their real names. And they all laugh at him. But then they never actually tell him their real names. So their names just become Ram-Man and Fisto because they don't. That's the funny thing, is they don't actually have real names in the He-Man universe.
Right.
And so, but you constantly expect them to say like, no, that's not my name. My name is this. And they simply don't.
Yeah,
and
which is great, because that is, and this again, I think is very clever, where the movie is basically telling you should view this movie and the things that happen in it through the lens of like a small child, So the things that happen in this movie, the names people have, the events that happen, don't look at it as an adult. Look at it as you would have looked at it with the mind of a child, and enjoy it on that level. So it's like, the movie is just saying, relax, have fun with it. We know it's dumb. We know it's silly. We're just having some fun and being entertaining here, But I like that it basically told you that without having to like be giga obvious about it. They weaved it into the actual story, I think, pretty well. So And
it it's also that this film is very deliberately surface level. It is good guys versus bad guys. And it's even hilariously brought up in this movie when Adam asks, why are we fighting Skeletor? And the answer is he's bad. He's just bad.
He's bad.
He has a skull for a face. And then he said, something, I forget what the line is, but surely it can't be that simple.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, it is. Actually, it is just that simple. He is bad. How do you know he has a skull for a face?
Yeah, exactly.
And then late in the movie, when he's trying to reason with Skeletor and have a conversation and find out if there's depth to him, he basically just laughs and says, "I love being a villain."
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great because, like, again, I feel like there's a lot of messages to the people that grew up with this and may be tempted to take it too seriously, because we are really honestly, like, with all these remakes and stuff, we're really told to take our childhood stuff like way too seriously these days, where it's like, here's a dark, dramatic retelling of this childhood franchise or something, and all that kind of stuff. And like, this movie is saying, kind of the opposite, where it's like, no, you shouldn't really try to apply any greater meaning than existed back then. I mean, the meaning is this: you were a child and you enjoyed it. And that's all there needs to be. It was just fun, for you as a kid. And so I almost, maybe I'm reading too much into them, telling us not to read too much into it. But I feel like there was a message in that movie of enjoy the stuff that you enjoyed in your childhood, but don't take it too seriously, and
Well,
nobody's
also,
going
I
to
mean,
ruin your childhood by doing it wrong or whatever.
I think also this film, if you're wondering who this is for, like, I do think anybody can have a pretty fun time at the theater watching this movie. But, it is designed to appeal, again, to a new generation of children. It's not some gritty reboot for Gen X 50-year-olds, right? This is a film that you can access more of if you have a familiarity with Masters of the Universe and He-Man. But at its core, it is designed to generate a new and younger audience. Now, whether it will be successful at that, I don't really know. I suspect not.
I don't think so. I think I haven't even checked. I don't know if they're releasing like a new actual kids toy line of movies for this. A lot of times when something like this comes out, they'll release some sort of like high-end expensive action figure line for adults with this discretionary income. They're like, I sure would love a Battle Cat on the shelf behind me in my Zoom calls. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like that was being released with this. But again, I think if they did try to do a new kids toy line with it,
They will.
I don't know. I mean, I just kind of let it be in the past. It's okay, but
let me explain why they
look it
will,
up.
or like they already have probably done that, though. So the reason why, DoA, I strongly feel that Amazon is wanting to release new toys for this, is that, and Mattel, is that when you look at He-Man as a toy line, there's a Netflix show that's very good, if you haven't seen it, called The Toys That Made Us.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
by
a
the
great
same
show.
people who did the movies that made us. And there is an episode on He-Man in there. And the reason why they are trying to revive He-Man, DoA, is at its peak. So its peak year of toy sales was in 1986. And in 1986 alone, He-Man made $400 million on toys.
It's never going to happen again, though. It's never going to happen again, and you can't make it happen again. Like it's just, it's a different era, different sensibility.
Imagine in the mid '80s making nearly $500 million on He-Man toys.
Hey,
that is
I remember
insanity.
As a little kid, I remember He-Man mania, and like it's all anybody talked about. He-Man was like the biggest. It was He-Man and it was Barbie. Those were the two big things, because back then, like toy marketing, and like I don't know what toy marketing is like these days, but that back then it was very divided along gender lines in terms of little boys and little girls. Little boys were, we were supposed to do He-Man, Thundercats, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Dino Riders, you name it, right? On that side. And on the girl side, it was Barbie, My Little Pony, I don't know, whatever else my sisters had at the time, I guess. I want to say Care Bears, but Care Bears is kind of for everybody, because they care, Monty. Yeah. But, at that time, going back to what I was saying, it was very much like He-Man and Barbie were like the two, like pinnacles of toys, as I remember them as a kid in the mid to late 80s.
I just put it through an inflation calculator, DoA, and $400 million would be $1.25 billion today.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I mean, you can see why they're really interested in reviving this, not only for the toy angle, but for the nostalgia angle, in order to convince people to watch this movie, to start a franchise, because very clearly at the end of this, they are setting up for a franchise.
Yeah. I don't see a ton of. There is a new line of He-Man toys, and it's actually like pretty reasonably priced for our era, where the looks like the regular figures are like $11 and the deluxe figures are like 17, and then there's some vehicles for a little bit more, which is not bad actually. So I guess, you know, they are trying to make a kids toy thing out of it. Again, I just don't think it's going to work, because another thing you have to think about too is that the 80s, as we've experienced in our 80s fantasy movie watching thing, which I hope we can get back to someday, the 80s was barbarian mania too. And like
Yeah, it was
that's
all
kind of what
based off of
He-Man
the
is. Yeah,
yeah,
he's
the
another Conan the
Conan.
Barbarian. He's riding the barbarian hype train, right? So this was like Conan for kids, basically. So you know, that's also something that doesn't exist right now, is there's no barbarian mania at the moment. So it's a little bit harder to get people excited about He-Man, right? But you know, because even God of War is not as popular as Conan was, you know, back in the day, if you're talking about barbarian-esque you know, characters. So I just think, you know, again, it's not just a matter of like people like the toy for the toy. It was also like tied into the cultural zeitgeist as well. So you know, it's cool they're making it. I can't imagine it's going to do anywhere near as well as the first line, you know, or other current
and you know
toy
what?
lines.
It is a shame, because honestly, this movie is a lot better than many Marvel movies these days.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Because it's self-aware about its own ridiculousness, and it wears it on its sleeve, and it doesn't try to be anything that it's not. It is very clearly a paint by numbers story of the orphan boy comes back to defeat the person who killed his parents, and he's you know, he's the Prince of Eternia. Don't ask, by the way, DoA, the giant plot hole, why no one who he grew up with can remember who he is or even his name. So like all the Ram-Man and other people, he comes back and they accidentally call him Alan when he lived with them and was the prince of their planet until he turned 10.
They've been through decades of war. This kid was kind of a loser anyway. Like I can forgive Mechanic for this.
I just find it pretty hilarious that we know that they knew him because they were key members around the royal family, and they mess up his name. And they also can't imagine that it would be him, even though they all know he went into a space-time wormhole with the Sword of Power. Anyway,
I don't
that plot hole aside, and many other plot holes aside,
sure, but who cares?
It is an entertaining ride.
Yeah,
and it features pretty universally good acting performances. The writing is fun. It doesn't attempt to be deep. It's well directed. The special effects look fantastic in this movie.
It's a great looking movie.
You know,
sure.
As a popcorn flick, there is really very little to complain about.
The people next to me enjoyed it. Like for sure. They were talking about how good it was.
This film has zero ambition. You have to understand that.
Oh, I don't know if I'd say that. It's ambitious in that it's, you know, trying to be big and crazy and exciting and entertaining. And the action set pieces are good in this movie.
They are very good
too. And you know, if we look at the director Travis Knight, this is the third movie he's directed. He did Kubo and the Two Strings,
which is a banger, by the way.
Exactly, it was. And then he also did the Bumblebee Transformers movie, which was good. It was good. I would say it was a little bit better filmed than this. But Travis Knight seems to have a knack for taking these things that, you know, don't necessarily need to have like great depth of storytelling, but adding a flair to it and telling that story that he needs to tell in a good enough way that he produces really entertaining movies. I'd like to see him direct more things, because I think he's good. I think he's really good.
Well, luckily for you, DoA, he almost certainly will direct more things, including Wildwood, which is another stop motion animation film that he's putting out later this year. He will definitely be directing more things, DoA, because he is unfathomably wealthy, and he's the son of Phil Knight, the former CEO of Nike.
Okay, so that helps.
Yeah. His dad is really famous, and he has used his family's wealth, to his credit, to make really good animated features. So Kubo and the Two Strings, if you're not familiar with it, is astoundingly good stop motion animation. And he paid a ton of money to get this done. And, you know, this isn't I won't say not, but it isn't just some Nepo baby stuff either. He really is very talented at animation. And I think that comes across in this film as well, because he knows how to integrate a lot of these effects in a way that is way better than many other directors. So I do think he is very legitimately talented. And I am really actually quite looking forward to his new stop motion animated film. But this guy will throw infinity money at the fiddliest like nerdiest animated projects because he can and he loves it. And but my point is, he really has a sense of craftsmanship that a lot of other directors don't have. And go watch Kubo and the Two Strings. Like, this guy is legit.
Yeah, and Bumblebee, honestly. Bumblebee's pretty great. And has like the best intro of any live action Transformers movie ever. Like the intro to Bumblebee.
It's the best Transformers movie.
It is. It is by far the best live action Transformers movie. Because there's a better Transformers movie that also came out in the 80s, coincidentally, came out in 1986. Which we'll be talking about later this year when it's re-released in theaters on its 40th anniversary apology tour, is what they're calling it, which is awesome if you know why. But we'll get into that in a few months. But yeah, it is. Bumblebee is the best live action Transformers movie by a mile, I would say. And again, Travis Knight directed, seems to be very talented. I think he's particularly good at this type of content, and so yeah, hope we get to see more. He should do like a G.I. Joe movie, bring that back. Why not? You know.
Well, the weird thing about this movie, DoA, is that, people have been asking Amazon, well, this film cost $200 million to make. That means it probably needs like $400 million to actually make money back. It's only made $50 million. It made $40 million its first weekend, which was apparently very disappointing. The question is, so this was made by Amazon and MGM. And so does that mean that, if it's a success on Amazon Prime, which it might be, because I do think that this film will very much benefit from word of mouth. And I do think a lot of people are going to wait to see it on Amazon Prime when it will be a Prime exclusive and it will come out. So there's a possibility that Amazon views this as a success if the streaming numbers are very good. And I've also heard rumors that Jeff Bezos is a massive He-Man fan, which also might be part of the reason. So this is all to say, Amazon themselves have been saying, we don't really consider this a failure, which you could say, okay, of course they say that, but they could also just say nothing. So it's a little telling that they're saying something. And so I think that they are anticipating this slowly building, a reputation around it. And I think they have confidence that the film is actually good, which it is for what it is. And I do think that this is something that I would say go see in the theater if you just want a popcorn flick to enjoy. In the same way that I would say go see Mortal Kombat 2, which we reviewed a few weeks ago. I do think Mortal Kombat 2 is better than this movie, but this is just an enjoyable evening with a friend, right?
Or by yourself in my case.
I went by myself too, DoA. Don't worry.
It's with you in spirit. But yeah, I can't recommend this movie enough, but there's more to talk about, with this. First of all, Jared Leto as Skeletor, and Jared Leto's he's an easy guy to make fun of in Hollywood right now for a lot of good reasons, but you can't deny that when he gets like certain characters, especially villain characters, he can really do great with those. And like I think he was good in Blade Runner. He is great as Skeletor, I think, because
he's super good.
He just hams it up. Like, he totally gets what he's there to do, and he just goes all in. And I love it.
He nailed the British accent too. Like, he's American, but he really nailed especially all the trills and ornamentation on this ostentatious British accent, which I think obviously is over the top, but probably is difficult for many American actors to do that well. The voice is obviously modulated, but his intonation is good. They really reflect a lot of what I imagine are his facial expressions in Skeletor's skull. The animation on Skeletor is fabulous. It's so well done.
It was
compared to Mandalorian and Grogu, which we talked about last week. The difference between Skeletor and Rod of the Hutt in terms of animation craftsmanship is great. And again, I think this is a lot of Travis Knight, who is really good at animation. Like, this is why you get a director like this to do this, so you can make Skeletor look good, because it's very important that he does.
What impressed me a lot with Skeletor's facial animations, with his skeletal animations, I should say, is that they didn't do a ton of like distorting the bones of the skull. They certainly did that. But if you notice, and I was thinking about this while I was watching the movie, they were very, very good about conveying the emotion that Skeletor is trying to convey a lot of times from the angle at which you see the skull and the angle at which the lower jaw is with the upper jaw. And sure, they were deforming the skull, deforming the eye sockets a little bit, the mouth here and there, but they never did it very much. It was always very subtle, and the expressions were more conveyed by the angle at which they showed his skull. And I thought that was really clever because it was almost easy to miss that they were changing the skull at all, and yet you got all this emotion from it, you know? So I thought that was really impressive when I was watching it. I was like, wow, they really get how to like make a skull emotive and not look cartoonish, you know?
Yeah. And when you see Jared Leto, I think for good reason, with Morbius and Suicide Squad, he has gotten a bad rap.
Yes,
I think for good reason. Like, I think his form of method acting, I'm not going to call it too extreme because method acting is method acting. It's not really more extreme than other versions of method acting because you're always in character. So it can't be more method. You know what I mean? It just is or is not method.
People kind of like, yeah.
But his form of method acting, especially with the stories that came out about the Joker and Suicide Squad, was just kind of weird and gross.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think Jared Leto got a bad rap, possibly earned, and also he wasn't very good in either of those movies. But people do forget that Jared Leto, when he's good as a character actor in certain roles, is like really good. And he played a trans woman in Dallas Buyers Club, and he won an Academy Award, guys. Like, he's an Academy Award winning actor. You just have to deal with that fact. And he deserved it too, that he's super good in that movie. He's super good in Fight Club and Blade Runner 2049. And he carries the shit out of this movie. He is phenomenal in this. He is the single best thing about this whole movie, and it's not a bad movie. He just is really good in this. There's not another way to put it.
He stands out for sure. Skeletor is a highlight of this movie, but I don't want that to sound like the other actors didn't do a good job, because I think everyone kind of did a pretty great job in this. I thought Nicholas Galitzine, how do you pronounce his name? Galitzine. I'm sorry, Nicholas. I tried. As He-Man, he worked really well. He looks like He-Man. You know, he definitely put in the work on the physique and all that. He's got the right shaped face. They teased the hair to look correct. Very convincing, toy accurate for the most part. He-Man, obviously can't give him the haircut from the cartoon, because that's the same haircut that my 3-year-old daughter has right now, and it just doesn't work well on grown men. I'm sorry. But I think they did a good job of evoking that He-Man haircut without going for the full-on bangs. We also saw Miles O'Keefe sport a similar haircut in The Green Knight, which was another example of why you should never have that haircut as a grown man. I don't care if you're a Prince Valiant fan or not. It just doesn't work. I'm sorry. It looks adorable on children. Doesn't work for adult males, I think. And I'm sorry. If somebody in the comments below, give me an example somebody pulled it off. I'd love to see it. Haven't seen it yet. I'm past the time where I could have considered doing this, so it's too late for me now, but I'd love to see other people give it a shot. I think Idris Elba moving on as Man-at-Arms was great. I think he was a character that actually had some character development through it, where there was a little bit of development for each of the characters in their own way, but he had that real arc of having some convictions that were then tested, and him kind of like giving up all of his convictions and becoming a drunk and all that, and sort of like finding a balance of maturing but also holding to some the good parts from before. So that and Idris Elba was just great in everything he's into, so can't go wrong with him. I thought Kamala Mendes did a good job with Tila as being sort of like the straight man to the goofiness of Adam, of Nicholas Galtzine's Adam, Prince of Eternia, where she was like the one who knows the world and is bringing him into this world and is sort of guiding him, but at the same time, kind of everyone kind of needs his help. What's another good example of a character like that? I don't know. Anyway, she did a good job. Everybody did a pretty good job. All the side characters were, good in their roles. Whoever played Fisto and Ram-Man and Mecha Neck, I mean, for what is this movie rated? PG-13. I don't know. What was this movie rated again? PG-13. Okay, that's a lot of fisting jokes for a PG-13 movie. But you know, it is what it is.
I do think that some of those sex jokes were not very funny and also weirdly out of place in this movie that was desperately trying to appeal to children. So it wasn't like one or two was okay. I just felt that it kept going on just a little bit too much.
Like, okay, like we know the character's name is Fisto, sure. A lot of people are going to have that same
the joke writes
kind of
itself. His name is Fisto.
Right. And like, I think the first time they brought it up and kind of alluded to, to it, that was like, haha, kind of like, oh, there's a joke for the adults kind of thing. Then they kept coming back to it. And I'm like, really? Yeah. This is the thing you want to zero in on is the joke you want to keep coming back to? I'm like, it's like I said, it's a lot of jokes about something kind of extreme, in a sexual sense for a movie that is not necessarily marketed to children, but is, going to be seen by a lot of, older kids and like middle school kids who may have, very interesting questions for their parents after seeing this. So I felt like they kind of went a little bit too far with all that too. Just cause like, not in that it was like too extreme of content, but it was just like too much, right? Where it was just like, it just wasn't funny the second and beyond times, it's like, we did that joke already. But they really thought it was funny, apparently. So I'm just going to keep talking about it. Yeah.
They throw a lot of jokes at you, DoA, and like some of my favorite ones were just the most subtle jokes in here because there's a lot of things that you can just notice in this movie that are just intrinsically funny. So one of my favorite gags that they did was they put Adam as an HR professional, which also was super funny because separately he was trying to use his HR tactics on entities of pure evil, which like obviously exposes how hilarious these HR tactics are because they only ever work if someone actually has goodwill and can do nothing in the face of someone who actually disagrees with you. But one of my favorite gags was at the beginning because this movie doesn't reveal him to be named He-Man until the very last scene of the film, which we'll get into. But right at the start, though, it had his name Adam on his desk, and underneath it said he, him, his pronouns, which is like a hilarious way in 2026 to think about He-Man, right? Because you get the joke up front.
Yeah, all the talk about pronouns that we've had in our cultural zeitgeist. It was fun to see it there because like his character is He-Man, which is It's like a pronoun and then like the gender thing right there. So it fits perfectly into that like a humorous kind of like nod to the cultural conversation, we'll say. So yeah, I appreciate that too. Other people like they took it the wrong way, I guess. So I saw a lot of comments where it was like, oh, so some people are calling this movie woke, and I'm like, what is?
It was actually a joke about that.
Yeah, kind of, and it was just a reference to his silly character name too, So I don't know. I think it was just a funny moment that people took too seriously, but I do agree that was a good one. Yeah, especially because he's like an HR manager, so that's a role right now that deals with that topic fairly regularly in today's workforce. So
I also like how he has to learn to basically be violent against his enemies because he wants to talk to them first. And, he comes from this world and background where it is about having these very fake conversations in order to resolve conflict, which really what it is just trying to make the other person stop having the conflict. You're not actually trying to resolve anything that's happening. You're just using words, complicated and obscure words at them in order to make them stop feeling bad about whatever they're feeling bad about. But it is very funny because He-Man himself is just he's a man of violence by his very nature. The entire concept of He-Man was to be as massively masculine as possible and to beat up the bad guys. And he finds himself in this world and this scenario where he has to do exactly that, which it does do a good job of having the fish out of water story in that way.
Yeah, and like it, the whole kind. I don't think there's any deep meaning in this film or anything like that. But it's like it's funny to see your hero kind of have the reverse truth kind of like exposed to them, where a lot of times you'll see a hero that's like too violent, is like fighting is the only answer. And then you find out that, there is more nuance to conflict resolution, right? And that's the moral that the hero learns over the course of, and this is the opposite, where it's like,
Which is
here's
great.
someone who's purely, he's in a position where he must only use words to solve conflicts. Violence is never going to be an option in the workplace, obviously, for good reason. But then he goes to a place where, violence is necessary.
It's the only option
for defense, and so he kind of learns that, in his situation he does have to be a violent person, for the greater good.
But this transformation is really enjoyable, and
It's
I
funny,
think it makes this film very fresh and surprising. And I think that's another thing that this movie has going for it, is that yes, the storyline is very played out, but the actual execution really does feel quite fresh in this film.
This message is sponsored by Raycon. And if you're still looking for that perfect Father's Day gift, I would recommend picking up some Raycon earbuds, such as the Raycon Essential Open Earbuds. If your dad doesn't like earbuds inside his ear canals, these wrap around the outside. They have very light force, but they still stay on. I've used them at the gym, and I've had no problem with them staying on my ears. They sit on the outside, so you can still hear everything that's going on around you. Raycon has over 3 million customers, and the sound quality is just as good as the way more expensive brands. They save money because they don't have physical stores and they sell them directly to you. If you don't like them or your dad doesn't like them for any reason, they have a 30-day happiness guarantee, so there's no worries. If you're looking for something else, you might try the Raycon Essential Earbuds as well. These have active noise cancellation, works great. I was using them on my plane trip back to America from Korea recently, and it blocks out all that noise. They also have an awareness mode, so you can hear what's going on around you, and they have a charging case. They never run out of batteries, by the way. It's super easy. You can get something like 50 hours of charge off of a single charge to the pod. They're fantastic as well. So whatever your dad likes, you can upgrade your dad's everyday routine. Go to buyraycon.com/nerdlegionopen to get 15% off. And thank you very much to Raycon for sponsoring Nerd Legion.
Well, I mean, with all these kind of themes too, it's like it's not dismissive of the source material, where like some movies we see just kind of like, it seems like they want to just sort of like be cruel to the source material and make fun of it because they're like, oh, this is so goofy, right? Haha. And it kind of comes off as mean.
DoA, I'm actually amazed that in this reboot they didn't make He-Man drunk and sad, which is what they do to every other
or Dolph
hero.
Lundgren's character as himself drunk and sad.
Exactly.
Yeah. But like, so but my point is that they didn't disrespect the source material in that, like, they acknowledged its goofiness, but in a way that is sort of like, yeah, we all had fun with this anyway, though, didn't we? We all enjoyed this, and that's perfectly fine, And so I like that they poked fun at the source material without being cruel about it, which is something we see a lot in movies. So.
Yeah, and it's refreshing that it's just a straightforward take, that it's not some super gritty, dark reboot, that it doesn't take our favorite characters or the previous iterations and make them horrible, failed versions of the heroes we remember.
Yeah.
It holds up all of the original characters and shines a very positive light on them.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's insane to say that feels fresh, but it does actually feel fresh, that they're not trying to ruin your own enjoyment from previous years.
It does give me hope. Like movies like this, the Mortal Kombat movie, the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie, I think I said coming into this one on one of our earlier episodes, like I have a little bit of hope that the way people are approaching these kind of things is changing, where there is a little bit more of acknowledgement and like this realization that everyone should have had from the beginning, where it's like, let's just do what people liked, let's just do what people still like and what people, enjoy remembering. There's no need to change the tone drastically with this because it has to be more mature for the mature audience. Like, no, you can still tell a good story and like maintain that lighter, sort of, tone with it. Right. And so, and I even think I apply that lighter tone thing to Mortal Kombat. And I know it's a movie about like horrifically slaughtering people, but it's done in good fun. And that's how it needs to be,
which is it always has been done in good fun, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's
It
Mortal
has
Kombat
been
has never been
ridiculous
serious.
violence and good fun. That has been the core of Mortal Kombat since the beginning.
So this movie, one of the terms on the internet that I think is getting way overused right now is it understood the assignment. But I see that like phrase way too much these days. But says old man DoA. But I think in this particular case, it does apply. They did understand, what would make a good He-Man movie, and they didn't try to change that or make it their own, which is another poisonous phrase in toy to film
and in
or
fact,
book to film transitions.
It's not that everything has been updated. Like, thank God Jared Leto didn't try and do the Skeletor voice from the cartoon. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, they would have had to find a guy with a higher pitched voice, Yeah, he just doesn't have that
what you feel about this is it's not a one-to-one copy. It is updated, but it's updated in a way that makes sense for the setting and for the characters and continues the spirit, I think, of those characters rather than trying to, bend it to something that it never was. It just feels like a more contemporary version of what you know.
It feels genuinely Skeletor without being, being grating on the ears, which like people, this reminds me of when everyone was like upset that Chris Pratt was going to be Mario in the Mario animated movies. And they were like, oh, he's not going to be like, it's a me, Mario. And I'm like, do you really want to listen to that for 2 hours? I'm like, it's fine when he's just like in a tiny cutscene in one of the games you're playing. You play a level and you hear him go, whoa, once in a while, that's fine. But to hear that for 2 hours, to hear a character talk like that for an entire movie length, nobody wants that, So yes, it made total sense to cast somebody else and have it be, a voice that kind of called back to that tone of Mario's voice, but yet something that's a little bit easier to listen to. And this is the exact same thing where like, go back and listen to Skeletor in the cartoons. It's fine for like a 20-minute cartoon, that you only get like maybe 5 minutes of Skeletor talking each episode, right? But imagine that voice for like a feature-length film, it would get grating and it would feel weird and out of place. So yeah, I think they were justified. How about that Alison Brie as well as Eva Lynn? I wanted to mention her as well because like I think in order to make Jared Leto's Skeletor work, you need to have the other half of that duo that is someone who is as committed to the role and hamming it up just as much and like totally gets the essence of the goofy villainy that the character represents. And the evil Lynn, Alison Brie, did a great job with that. And we know she's got, comedy chops. She was in Community, among other things. Like she's a very funny person. But I thought she was awesome in this. Like, and usually when it's somebody like that I've seen in like other shows, it's hard to separate the face from the other characters. But like, I admit I didn't even realize it was her for a little while. And then because I didn't look at the casting or anything like that, I just kind of went to it. I knew Jared Leto was I almost said the Joker. I knew he was Skeletor, but I didn't know any of the other actors for this. Because when I know I'm going to watch something, I try not to engage with it really at all until I go see it to come into it fresh. And so it was only like maybe halfway through, 2/3 of the way through, I was like, that's Alison Brie, isn't it? And she did great. And again, as a great counter to Jared Leto's Skeletor, and I thought her character was interesting too, where it's like she kind of had doubts about like Skeletor's leadership, but only in sort of like a Starscream and Megatron kind of way,
Sure. So where do you land on this film? Because like I would say you don't need to go see this in the theater. You don't need to see it at all. But if you do want to see it, it's going to be out on Amazon Prime, I believe, pretty soon. And I don't think if you have a 4K TV at home, which many people do at this point in time, I don't really see a reason to go to the theater for this.
Sure.
But it's a good popcorn flick if you want to watch it at home. And I think you'll enjoy your time with it. It's not, it's definitely, I wouldn't say worth seeing, but it's a good ride.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say go see it in the theater just for the reason that I want to have more movies like this made, and so I kind of want to see it do better in the box office. I don't think it's going to happen, but like, I think it's fun to see on the big screen because it's a big screen. That's really it. I mean, there's no other reason to see it in the theaters other than that. That's sometimes just more fun to see these spectacles on like a bigger surface, But I think a lot of us end up in situations where You know, it's like you're tired, you want to watch something, but you don't want to think too hard. You just want to like,
Exactly.
you know, sit down on the couch and like be entertained, maybe, you know, pop some popcorn or something like that. Just like have fun for a couple hours, you know? I think a lot of us who grew up with He-Man, who are now in our 40s and have kids and jobs and all that, there are plenty of evenings where we are tired and we just want to like sit down on the couch
You
for a
just want to
couple
pass
hours
the
and
blunt.
yeah, exactly. Yes. And this movie can be the blunt. This is your blunt in movie
okay.
form. Yeah, it will relax you in this and you know, tickle your funny bone in the same way. That was not a Skeletor pun, but you can take it as one if you wish. But yeah, I would say, you know, again, like keep it in the back pocket for something like that. You know, for when you've got a night where you just want to, you know, watch something that entertains you and chill out. You know, it's a great movie for that. And that's fine. That's not an insult. I think we need movies like that.
And by the way, you know, DoA, you have the argument that you made in the past of what is the perfect mid movie. I think this is a strong candidate.
No, I think you're totally right. For me, I would bump it into the good category. This movie can't be my ultimate mediocre movie because I like it too much already, you know, where my ultimate mediocre movie like has pleasant feelings, but you know, more passively. This is I'm actively enjoying it a little bit too much. But I've no doubt that for other people out there will be some people where this will become
me, by the way, because I don't have any nostalgia for it. So for me, it is like the perfect down the middle of the road mid movie.
Perfect then. Yeah. I mean, for me, a lot of the time, for a long time, my ultimate mediocre movie was Blade 2. And I haven't talked about this concept on the show for a while. It's been at least a year or something. So let me explain it to you. The concept of the ultimate mediocre movie is that you have one movie by which you can determine if any other movie is a good movie or a bad movie. And the way you do this is when you're watching this movie, you think to yourself, would I rather be watching my ultimate mediocre movie? And if the answer is yes, what you are watching is bad. And if the answer is no, what you are watching is good. So I did that for many, many years. Fast and the Furious 3 Tokyo Drift was my ultimate mediocre movie for a long time too, where it's like I'd be watching, you know, anything, right? Like the Pearl Harbor movie. And I would think to myself, would I rather be watching Blade 2 right now? And the answer, of course, with Pearl Harbor was yes. And so I knew by virtue of my feelings about Blade 2 that Pearl Harbor was a bad movie. Whereas if I was watching like The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and I thought to myself, would I rather be watching Blade 2? The answer was very obviously no. Return of the King is a fantastic film. And so again, by virtue of Blade 2's quality, I could tell that Return of the King was a good movie, you know? So I encourage everyone out there to find their ultimate mediocre movie because it makes judging other movies much easier.
To be clear, you consider Masters of the Universe to be superior to Blade 2 and Fast and the Furious 3 Tokyo Drift.
Well, so Fast and the Furious 3 Tokyo Drift has since moved into my good movie category. It's bumped up a little bit. My love for that and all the Fast and the Furious movies has grown over time. So it's up there. Now, is Fast and the Furious 3 a better movie than Masters of the Universe? That's a good question. I don't know. I don't have an answer right now. I think I'll have to see Masters of the Universe again to really tell you, but they're close. They're close. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Hopefully this enlightened you to a certain degree if you've been contemplating seeing Masters of the Universe.
I'm sure it helps.
I'm sure it definitely informed your decision. So we'll see you guys next week for the next episode of Nerd Legion. Till then.